Hi, welcome everybody. And we're just going to wait for people to join us. Thank you for making the time on this sunny Our Future of Work series. We are joined by Linda Kasina, who is the principal of Kibondeni College in Nairobi in Kenya. We are joined by Dr. Belinda Nwasu, recently gained her PhD at the University of Southampton, where she researched the cultural implications of performance outcomes in quality assurance amongst international brand hotels. So very complicated, little bit of a mouthful, but really she's here as the woman for this job of understanding hospitality on the African continent and the role of the workforce. And I'm very excited also that we're joined today by Valentine. She graduated from Kibondeni in 2018. She's now the assistant manager of the Pepper Tree in Nairobi. She gained a diploma in catering and accommodation operations. And it's amazing to see the progress that she has made since graduating and is able to join with us and share her experiences with us today. On that note, I'd love to start this conversation that we're going to have, where we're going to be exploring a little bit about the hospitality industry in Africa, the role of young women and the opportunities that it gives to young women on the continent. We have these two very different sides to the story of Kenya, where hospitality has been the number 2 industry, hospitality and tourism, for many years until this last very difficult year. And Nigeria, which has a more dynamic economy in some ways, it isn't such a feature of the economy. And just to think about, what we can do and whether at a time when hospitality has been so affected by the pandemic, it's still a great choice for young women to make. And hopefully, well, after you've heard from everybody on our panel, you'll be able to make your own conclusion. So I'd like first to go to Belinda, who's currently in Enugu, and to ask her, Belinda, what has been the impact of COVID in this last year? What has the impact been on young women's job prospects in Africa? And particularly in this sector.
Thank you for having me on, Olivia, and welcome to all our attendees wherever you are zooming in from. It's a pleasure to be one of the panelists on this very important topic about hospitality during the post-COVID-19 era. Really post, maybe not so much, depends on which part of the globe you're in. And as to your question, hospitality, I have worked in this industry for close to 20 years. And to date, I have not seen or experienced anything as devastating as the COVID pandemic has been on our industry. Without presenting a doom and gloom perspective, I would just say, quite honestly, that the industry has taken a very big hit. In some places, it has actually been decimated. We have now more firing than hiring taking place. What has been to date the biggest employer of labor, hospitality has shed quite a number of employees, the workforce. So yeah, in answer to your question, we've had a dramatic year and 3 months now, 4 months since the pandemic, and we are looking for a glimmer of hope, and I think that hope resides in the people. So with all the infrastructure developments and the plans that we've seen in the past, we realize now, and it has hit us very hard, that people form the single most important part of the industry. And going forward, I'm sure that any recovery that does not include people will be seriously flawed. We've learned our lessons from this pandemic and its effects, that putting people first, both in planning for such scenarios unplannable scenarios, is part of the picture. And I think that was omitted. So I think we're wiser. There are many more things that we've learned from the situation. And going forward, I'm very hopeful. But yes, we've taken a hit.
And Belinda, in terms of the way that it's affected men and women in the industry differently, is that something that you've noticed, or is it something that hasn't really had any gendered implications?
The gender implications are immense. Women form a significant part of the industry, and since we've had the outfall, or the loss of the workforce, literally, a lot more women have been affected in the tourism sector. I'm doing a paper currently, some research on how specifically the pandemic has impacted on women. Specifically, we've had, because of the lockdown and closure of many businesses, we had many entrepreneurs, employees, women who have had to actually leave the workforce because of their home care duties, increased home care duties, either from illness or for childcare or for homeschooling that we all experienced and had an insight into how difficult that was. A lot of that fell on the women, and so they had to make that transition from the workplace back to these caring duties. And so that's what we experienced, that most of the job losses, most of the women account for the job losses in the hospitality industry, specifically because of the sheer number of women percentage-wise that are actually part of the workforce. And that's still being studied. That's still something that is a minefield for research, just how much that impact was felt.
Thank you, Belly. And to come to you, Linda, so obviously you have a very clear perspective, across the industry in Kenya. What have you seen the impact of COVID being?
Thank you very much, Olivia. Similar to Belinda, I've been involved in the hospitality industry, more from the point of view of training, education, for over 10 years. Obviously, in order to do this efficiently, we keep very close links with the industry in order to facilitate the attachment or placement of students in different sectors of the industry. So COVID has been very difficult. We've had a contraction of the industry of almost 83% last year. What we have seen is that the effect on the industry has depended a lot on the measures that are put in by the government in order to fight the pandemic. So now, for example, last year, in terms of employment in hotels generally, there's a survey of Central Bank which indicated that in May of last year, employment was at 37%. In November of last year, it went up to 53%. January this year, it went up to 57%, but has dropped once more because of the closure of the hotels. And for example, currently in Kenya, it's not possible to sit in restaurants, etc. So that obviously has affected the industry quite a bit. What are we seeing? I'll just pick up on the question you asked, Belinda, about the impact on women specifically in the industry. So in Kenya, in terms of gender disparity in employment in the hospitality industry, women make up, for example, 36 to 40% across the board. So obviously with the pandemic, I will say that what we have seen, at least among the alumni of the college, and I think it can be generalized to the rest of the country, is that there has been a reduction of safe spaces, we could say, for women, because obviously majority of those women live in informal settlements. The pandemic has had an impact in terms of safety and safety, and generally the economic impact of the pandemic has meant that there's been a lot of loss of jobs. And therefore, in the informal settlements, there's more insecurity, and that obviously has affected the women and has made the possibility of working in a regular way more difficult for the women. Just recently, we've been seeing in the country, for example, the impact of the curfew hours and just safety of traveling in the evening, etc. So we see women in this way are, we could say, perhaps especially affected by the pandemic. So as Belinda said, on the other hand, we're also seeing a lot of initiative by the women after loss of jobs. In Kenya, many times, especially among the lower earning brackets, the women tend to fight more to put food at table. And we have seen that here there's been a lot of initiative in trying to diversify sources of income, in trying to, for example, set up a small kitchen garden, to have a small business, etc.
Very interesting, and we're going to discuss that a bit more later. And especially, I'm really excited to hear from Valentine and also Mary John's experience later about that, who can't join us today because sadly she's unwell. But I want to come back to you, Belinda, just now and ask you, because when you spoke to us in Parliament a year ago, you were telling us about, you know, the amazing opportunities that technical and vocational education brought to young people in Nigeria in a very challenging job market compared, for example, to doing a university degree. Would you say that that's still the case now? How has the panorama changed with COVID?
Interesting that you bring that up, because that's really what seems to be emerging in the market. What was difficult before was to imagine how a person with a vocational education qualification could compete in the same job market as a university graduate. You know, in this particular environment, university graduates are esteemed a lot more. They are prime material in the job markets. I won't go into that discussion because that's a discussion for an entirely different webinar. But the reality on ground is that graduates found it a challenge to have that qualification, even though rightly so they were skilled, they had the right skills and were able to compete, they were lower down the ladder. Now, with the pandemic, which has required people to become more resourceful, as Linda has also pointed out, has pointed out very clearly, it requires people to be more resourceful and people to have more access to skills that would enable them to, well, acquire some kind of income, which usually falls along the scale of the vocational area. So we suddenly see a turn where people with skills, technical skills in the vocational space, have more of an advantage over the norm, over the status quo. So that's, again, a big advantage for us in hospitality, for vocational education and training, because people actually were able to set up businesses, as we're going to discuss later and see with examples of Valentine and Mary John. People have actually been able to set up businesses precisely because they entered the vocational route as opposed to the university route. So that's a very interesting dynamic to watch over the coming months. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think actually this is a really lovely moment to ask you, Valentine, about that experience and you know, what you have seen yourself as a young woman who chose the vocational track, who chose to do a diploma leading into a hospitality career, and who's, you know, lived through this pandemic, worked through this pandemic, and also seen the impact on your former classmates at this time. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you so much, Olivia. What I would have to say about having taken the path of the vocational training is, to this point, I am glad to have taken that path because I have seen the fruit in that in the Kenyan setting, we have been made to understand that after secondary education, you can only go to prosper, you can only go to a university. But since to my end, what I wanted is to do something that I was passionate about, hospitality being what I really wanted to do. So applying to be enrolled in Kibondeni, being a technical college, is what made me to get to where I am now, because you're equipped with skills and like theory part of it only. And apart from the skills, it's craft skills that you're able to apply even in your point of work. So I have clearly seen a difference when it comes to someone who has gone to a technical institution compared to someone who has attended to a university. And you can clearly see the difference comes to when the ones attending craft institutions tend to have proper crafted skills, and like those who've gone to universities who have much of the theory part of it, and like they're not able to apply it when it comes to skills. And I've clearly seen that when it comes to work. I remember when I was joining my internship at Radisson Blu, it is very hard to be able to tell someone who's gone to a university of changes that they need to do, or maybe correcting them, because they feel like you are a bit of a lower level of study compared to them. So there's nothing you're able to tell them. But we appreciate it when it comes to working, that you're able to apply your skills to a better knowledge of it, apart from just having the theory level of whatever you need to do. I appreciate it because there is more to the skills than like theory. It's not like theory is not taught also, but there is more to the skills you're able to apply also with the theory included.
And I think that's such an important observation, because, you know, one of the things we're talking about today is about resilience and how the skills that you learn have made you more adaptable, more able to find opportunities in a very challenging time.
Yes.
And that maybe, you know, this moment, this demonstration of your skillfulness, of the skillfulness of people with technical and vocational education, will help to shift that and help to change that opinion a little bit. Belinda, do you have any thoughts on that?
On the vocational change of perspective?
Yeah,
or
on the value of vocational training.
Okay, well, pretty much what I've said already is we've seen vocational education take its rightful place, because at the end of the day, technical moves things forward, right? It's the technical aspect of the working space that actually creates products, creates experiences, and creates new lifestyles that really have to emerge from this pandemic. And I see that happening. And it is very interesting to see how, with the courses that Wavecrest runs, just how many people coming in from banking, from economics, from medicine, entering the hospitality space, because I think it's generally seen and accepted now that this is the way forward. It's been a long time coming, but I think we have had the pandemic push that forward, that agenda forward. And I'm very happy, Valentine, fantastic story. I've had that experience a lot of it being difficult to teach the taught. Yeah, it's a lot easier to follow the run of what is happening at the moment. But I think what's happening here now is people in the vocational space are taking their rightful positions. Yes.
And Belinda, just to give our audience a little clarification, so Wavecrest is a school similar to Kibondeni. It's a vocational school that focuses on training for the hospitality industry. It's another Wonder Foundation partner school. And you've been a mentor there, you've taught there, you've been a mentor there for many years, as well as your current role. And I guess the other thing, Belinda, I'd like to just ask you about, because, you know, we've had this discussion a lot together, you've really helped me to understand this, but is the importance of the soft skills, the creativity, the not just knowing stuff or how to, that hospitality training really teaches young people.
I remember the conversation we had, Olivia, about the soft skills. I was listening to a webinar hosted by Simon Sinek, and where he talked about the divide between hard skills and soft skills. And he mentioned something that really struck me, and that was when we talk about hard and soft skills, we kind of create a division between the two, like they're in opposition of each other. And he said he would rather refer to the soft skills as human skills. And I felt that was just so apt in capturing what hospitality creates for the individual. Especially in the vocational space, we have people developing human skills. And where does creativity lie? It lies with the humanity, that ability to dig deep and to come out with resourcefulness. All right. So now we have products of our schools, Wavecrest, Kimbondeni, etc., not only acquiring the technical know-how, but also acquiring the ability to think outside of the box and to create situations where they can feed their families and create a livelihood. Like the example that we have is with Mary John. She would have loved to be on this webinar, but she was sadly taken ill. She's much better now, recuperating. And she had a fantastic story to tell about how she moved from sitting at home during the early days of the lockdown, April to July last year, and thinking, what can I do? Everybody was laid off. All the interns were laid off in the hotel where she was at. And what kicked in, what she learned in school about entrepreneurship, about business ideas. So going beyond the pots and pans, she was able to come up with an idea. I love fruits. I love creating things from fruits. And so I will create a smoothie business. So we have somebody who technically would say, okay, it's hospitality, that's, the kitchen, housekeeping, very good, but that's where it ends. No, she had something additional, how to be creative. And now she has a business that is running, soon to be registered, and she's supplying her products at events, etc. And she singularly mentioned that this came from what she learned in school, apart from the practical classes in all the other vocational technical subjects. She also learned how to look beyond and to identify needs within the market. So I think with these stories of actual people who have lived these experiences, I think we can push that forward, that hospitality creates the technical know-how, but also the human skills that allow you to navigate in what is becoming a very difficult reality, but gives you that opportunity. We can see what on the screen. I think you can all see on the screen, that's Mary John with her products, and all of this conceived at home and within her knowledge of hospitality.
And Valentine, I'd like to bring you back because your classmates have had similar experiences of using your skills to make sure that you are more independent, resilient in your careers. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
Yes, thank you very much. And it's not so different from what Belinda has mentioned, Dr. Belinda, sorry. And it's clearly what I have seen with the past 1 year in the pandemic is people at least are able to rise up very strongly from hard times and tough times. And having acquired the skills we acquired in college, at least you're able to discover potential in a particular job that you are passionate about. And this goes into housekeeping, laundry, and also in the kitchen, cookery. So clearly what I have seen with my friends and also applying to me also being employed is that with the skills that you've acquired, I've seen a friend of mine open a bakery, and she started with cakes, and slowly by slowly she incorporated other items like on the pastries, and now trying to make her bakery at least grow, and she's doing quite well. And then also apart from that, also in the formal and informal employment, is being employed also, I'm able to do cakes, bake cakes, do catering for small events and also large events when given the opportunity to. And I can clearly say there's value to it, that I have the skills, I'm able to apply to it. Yes, so clearly it's adaptable, and people are able to come out of tough situations because you engage your mind to use the skills that you attained and were equipped with in school to come up with great ideas and great businesses.
Super. And I want to come back to Linda, because one of Linda's passions is the mentoring that both Wavecrest offers, but also Kibondeni offers. And I think, you know, to go back to Valentine's story, it's not just having those skills, it's about how each one of us as an individual can use our skills creatively in those times when we're under pressure. Linda, can you tell us a bit about, you know, the importance of the mentoring in the school, what it helps, the value it adds?
Okay, thank you very much, Olivia. Now, I would like to, first of all, say something. I think you had mentioned what Kibondeni does and Wavecrest as well. I think it's of interest to first of all mention that Kibondeni College is a social project, which means that a majority of the students who come to Kibondeni come from very financially challenged backgrounds, low income backgrounds. That is important because it helps to understand the role of mentoring in that context. When one thinks about the hardships that growing up, for example, in an informal settlement, in a slum, in a town in Nairobi in Kenya, then one begins to understand that when one begins to take up this formal training, this vocational training, it's not only about acquiring skills. It's not only about acquiring skills. It's not only about the technical know-how. There's a whole world which begins in believing in yourself. Yeah, believing in yourself. That initiative that Belinda speaks about, that very lovely photo that she put of Mary, what we've had Valentine saying, I would say a mentor, first of all, helps the student, the young woman, to believe in themselves. Yeah, to believe in themselves, to believe that they can make something out of their lives. We had Valentine mention that in the society in Kenya, perhaps there is a feeling, a thought that I think Dr. Belinda also spoke about that the more successful person is the one who goes into the academic field, the one who takes up university studies. So already being enrolled in a technical college, coming from a difficult background can be a sort of challenge in terms of how one perceives themselves, their dignity as a person. So the mentor, first of all, helps us to discover that we are a wonderful person and we have so much potential that we can fulfill. We speak in Kibondeni about helping us to dream, yeah, helping us to dream, helping us to think sort of outside the box, to think beyond what we've grown up seeing our whole lives, helping us to discover possibilities. So that is important because we have seen it, as Valentine has mentioned. I have seen it with so many of our current and past students just in this past year of the pandemic. Olivia, I'd like to tell you a story which for me I was amazing. So last year in March, all the educational institutions in Kenya closed. So 3 months into that closure, we were through the mentorship system, following up the students, finding out how they were doing. As I've said, there was a lot of insecurity in the informal settlement, so that was a concern for us. Their access to basic needs was also a concern. But then what I found amazing is how resilient the students were, how quick they were to take advantage of opportunities. And one student told me there was government initiative to help unemployed youth in the informal settlements by giving them tasks such as repairing roads, etc. Yeah. So what happened, obviously, is that most of the people who were working on the roads were young men. And what the students would do, they told me, they would organize themselves in groups and sell food and snacks to these people. So it was fantastic because many of them told me, you know what, I am now the breadwinner. Yeah, my dad lost his job, but now I am the breadwinner. I'm helping to support my family. This income is helping to pay rent at home. And for me, that was like, that is it. Yeah, that is to believe in oneself, to be able to believe that I can change my life, I can change the life of my family, yeah? And it helps us to identify, to see a lot of potential. So that is essential in mentoring, that guidance, that motivation, helping the students through difficult moments. Obviously, as Valentine has said, the starting out is difficult, yeah, and there are ups and downs in employment, when one is trying to start up their own business, etc. So that motivation, the emotional support that the mentor gives, the possibility of supplying role models, the opportunity to help a person set goals, realistic goals, to help them to identify opportunities, resources, credit opportunities, for example. So that I think is key. That is key. And just winding up, Olivia, I go back to how important it is that a mentor helps the mentee to believe in themselves, because that is really key, to believe in oneself, yeah, to identify, to realize how much potential we have, and then to be able to break sort of the stereotypes, the structures that society may have put in place, and to reach one's full potential.
Thank you, Linda. And I mean, Valentine, you have the other side of this story. You have received the mentoring, and obviously you've now, you've achieved amazing things since you left Kibondeni. Do you think you would have the same kind of self-confidence and self-belief if you hadn't had the mentoring when you were there at the school?
Well, thank you very much again, because that's a very interesting and very important question. And as you've asked, is whether, why not for the mentoring I got in school, whether I would still be here? And that's clearly a no. Because apart from the technical skills you attain, is also the personal skills you get. To get someone to make you feel like you can really make it in life, that you still have so much growth ahead of you. You only need to gear up and continue. Because clearly at times you find that the hardships, actually, as Linda mentioned, it's you at times feel like you have no motivation to continue. You're just there and you can't really tell of what is in for you in the industry. And I remember clearing school, and we normally are enrolled to do internship in various hotels, and you are not sure, or you're also not certain of whether you're going to be getting a job after the internship. But the mentorship is what's steered is you're able to give your best when it comes to working, because you're hopeful of the job that is awaiting. I was very confident I would get a job because in school we are given these skills to believe in yourself. Having gotten the proper soft skills and the craft skills you need to work, it was very encouraging for me to also go ahead and face the world, as you're normally told, because clearly it's like when you're finishing school, you're now on your own to start life. It's another stage in life, So, but technicals, the college is not like the end of it, but it's like a beginning of a new journey to employment. And I would say the mentoring sessions I had in school were very helpful, and they're also very helpful to this stage, that I'm able to use the same mentoring sessions I had to be able to also impact other young women positively, to discover themselves in the stages they are in life. And I'm currently, not currently, but I'm very grateful for having gotten the mentorship sessions.
That's a really ringing endorsement. So thank you, Valentine.
Thank you.
And I mean, Belinda, you've also been a very experienced mentor. You've mentored Wavecrest current students, well, people who have been studying in Wavecrest in that moment. You've also mentored young women as they've started their way into the industry. Do you have anything to add to this conversation about that value of the personal beyond the technical?
I'd just like to buttress what Valentine has given as an example, and Linda has put it so well. Getting people to believe in themselves, self-confidence, and I find it two-pronged. First of all, self-confidence in the career that they have chosen. There's a complete change. My experience is seeing the students coming into the project, into the school at the beginning, very reluctantly, thinking, I should be studying medicine or I should be studying engineering. Why am I in a catering quote unquote school. And that's what we have for the first semester and a half. And then you notice when they're coming in for the second semester, a complete transformation in actually appreciating how what they are learning is not just about the technicality, but it's about life, you know, because we all have a lot of professional development courses as well, ethics courses, etc. I've had so many stories about how our students have gone for their internships and faced ethical issues and have drawn on the resources that they had in the college in terms of their mentors and, you know, all the information and learning about how to behave in a situation like this, applying it in the workplace and having the managers thinking, where did this fund come from? You know, where did she drop from? They go out there and create an oasis of sanity, you know, in the mad rush of business and, you know, the world, you know, as Valentine puts it. I've seen that, and I've seen that transformation. It just takes about a semester for that transformation to happen. But I think it's reinforced by the idea that there's somebody pushing you and encouraging you to be your best. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, between you've filled out this really beautiful picture of how this is an industry that has been, you know, buffeted, will probably remain buffeted for some time, but how training people to in both these schools is giving people the tools to really make the most of this challenging situation, financially, but also, I mean, as Valentine, to be that woman who is an example to others and is, you know, empowering the other women around them, to be that woman who, Belinda, as you mentioned, you know, is able to defend herself, to defend her rights, to defend the rights of those who are working around her, thanks to the training that she's had. Because, you know, we see so many examples of where women are trained, they go out into the world and they're not prepared for the challenges that women so often face in the workplace. So I guess on that note, I mean, I think we're agreed that hospitality is still a great thing to train for in this moment, despite the challenges. And I'd like to ask if you have anything else to add yourselves to the conversation, or if we should just go into the Q&A and see what anyone else might want to ask us. Okay, so shall we go to the Q&A? I think I'm hoping, I'm not sure if she's here, but we had one question to start with, which I'd like to ask Linda. We had a question in advance from a lady called Miriam, who was saying that for older women, sort of towards retirement, is hospitality still an industry to go into? And is it something that would make people more resilient? So Linda, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. You know, is it still something that gives women superpowers, like Valentine's got superpowers now, even when you're a bit more advanced in your career?
Thank you, Olivia. In answering this, I'd like to pick up from something that Dr. Belinda had said about how hospitality is about service to the person. And then that makes the industry so dynamic. It makes it, it's about serving others, it's about taking care of people. And therefore that means it doesn't matter what age you are, you can always find a niche in hospitality. You can always find something that you can do. You can always find a way to serve, So I would say that age is not an obstacle at all. I think it's simply a matter of finding out which aspect or which area of hospitality one has a passion for, and finding out a level in which you can take that up, which is suitable for your age. So I think there is absolutely no problem there. I don't see a problem.
Super. Belly, do you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you. I have the experience. Remember, I did mention earlier that we have people coming in, doctors, medical doctors, lawyers, etc., coming in to take on a hospitality course and move into that business space. These are older, more mature women who have spent some time in industry or employment or in business, and they are experiencing a career change, and they have been very successful as well. So I think age isn't a barrier at all in terms of coming into the industry, because it's exactly as Linda has said, it's dynamic, it's versatile, and everybody can find something worthwhile. So age isn't a problem at all. In fact, it's even an added advantage of bringing in more experience from life really.
Yeah, and I think that program is particularly interesting because it's not just people who are in really senior careers like doctors, for example, but you've seen in that Wave Crest program a lot of women from very different professional backgrounds.
Very, yeah.
Got good degrees, but just found that the industry that they were going into wasn't giving them the rewards or the freedom that they wanted to balance, caring responsibilities and things with with having a good income.
I think also, Olivia, a lot had to do when you speak to these ladies, because they also form part of the mentorship program, is that they actually didn't know. They just did the done thing, which was, as Valentine pointed out, you finish secondary school and you go to university. That's the done thing. So they didn't actually know. And if they had experienced or met hospitality before that, they probably would have made different decisions. That's just... And
I think it's also important to remember that university education in Nigeria, in Kenya, isn't necessarily just a luxury. There are many people from challenging, with challenging financial backgrounds who make really big financial sacrifices in order to get to university. And if it is your one shot, you really spent a lot of money on something that won't bear much fruit. Is that something you've also seen, Valentine, would you say?
Yeah, sorry. That's very true, because if I remember very well in school, it's you're not, like in my family, I'm not the only child. Of course, I have my siblings who are also doing school. And for me, going to college, it was a privilege, because what is normally as important is that you've done your primary education and your secondary education. And it's always a privilege to join a university or college to pursue your further education. So with the hardships we went through, I am glad that Kibondeni always gave us an opportunity to still continue with our studies. And this is thanks to the donors who would chip in and help us in clearing our school fee. Otherwise, were it not for the good-hearted people, it would have been harder to continue with studies.
Thank you, Valentine. And actually, that's a good reminder to all of us that if anyone does want to make a donation, in the chat below, there is a link for you to make a donation so that, more girls who, like Valentine when she started her studies, more girls like Mary John, who has now set up this business, are able to become women like Valentine, who are able to go and change the world, which is, I think once you start mentoring other people, really what you are doing. We have another question. Belinda, I think you are the one to answer this one.
Olivia, the connection is really bad. I don't know if you can hear me. I wanted to know.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Address. Perfect. Natalie Hernandez has a question, and she's asking about the number of women who are in senior roles in hospitality in Nigeria and Africa in general. It's very difficult to put a number to that at the moment. A lot of research is going on behind the scenes in order to capture this information and this data. The examples I can give of Nigeria are spaces. The change is happening. We have very few women in senior roles in the formal sector, quote and unquote, in direct employment at those senior roles. I'll just give the example of branded hotels, international brands. We have we've only had one female general manager. Yeah. And we're talking about a 19-20-year history. But now we're seeing small changes where we have now executive chefs in branded hotels who are women. And that's changing a lot. And I say the formal sector a bit different because in the informal sector, the entrepreneurs in hospitality are predominantly women. So they own their businesses, they run massive hospitality businesses. So it's a bit different when you compare to the employment, compare the employment with the business entrepreneurship space. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Super. And Linda, do you have something to add to that? And I think it's also important to note, it's not just about whether leaders are women, it's also about whether leaders are local women. Are they Kenyan women or in Kenyan hotels or, you know, so Linda, do you have something to add to that?
Mm-hmm. All right. I would say, when I think about the industries and the partners we have in the hospitality industries among the hotels, and I think Valentine would agree with me here. Okay, so what we see is, for example, in upper level management, hotel training managers, in certain specific roles, they are generally, perhaps I could say, I had mentioned earlier that in general, we have like a 40%, 60% women to men employment in the hotels. Then in terms of management, I would say in senior management, in training managers, departmental heads, we could have a number of women, but just similar to what Dr. Belinda has said, I am yet to meet a female general manager in Kenya, a local general manager. Yeah, that is not common at all. And similar also to what she said, most of the events, companies, events, organizations that are owned by entrepreneurs are actually owned and run by women. So that is true.
We are coming to the end of our time. I don't know if there's a last question that anyone has. Please do ask a question in the Q&A, or any last comments that any of our panelists would like to make. We've covered so many topics.
Olivia, I see another question from Natalie.
Yes.
Okay, so she says she has worked for over 30 years in the service industry in the UK. And she asks if any of the speakers would welcome working with someone from the UK in the mentorship of girls. And I think that is fantastic, Natalie. At least we in Kibondeni would be very interested.
Super. And I think Belinda would be as well. Valentine, maybe this is a moment for you just to explain briefly what it's like for you to have the chance as a student to hear from people with industry experience. You know, what is the value that that brings to you as students?
Okay. What I would say on that is this has been very informative, hearing from Linda Kasina and also Dr. Belinda. I have the motivation also to move on, because I know with the pandemic now being the second year, with all the tough days we normally get working and the uncertain days ahead of us, I still have hope in the hospitality industry. I still have hope that being the industry that was doing quite well the few, I would say early last year, is still, like in the past 2 years, is still the same industry that is going to pick up in the near future. I'm still very hopeful that we are going to be rising up as the hospitality industry. And also it motivates me to be able to mentor more as they are mentoring us, to be able to help also students who are trying to discover themselves, trying to discover where they belong. And it encourages me a lot.
And I can't think of a better way of ending the panel than with Valentine's words. Thank you all very, very much for your time this evening. For all of our audience, thank you for your support. If you do want to donate, it's still there, and we will follow you up. But thank you also for all of the offers of help from people in the chat. We will be in touch with you also, and so thank you. Let's cross our fingers and hope that all of these amazing young women who have been trained in and are being trained in Wavecrest and Kibondeni continue to use these skills that they are learning, not just to get better jobs, but as Valentine has so well demonstrated, to change the world around them little by little. Thank you all very, very much. Good night.